It is hard to imagine that a movie dubbed the origin of the science fiction and horror genre was released in 1979. Remember that at that time, black and white TVs were not yet popular, and watching movies was indeed a luxury. But it was in that context that Alien was born, becoming a classic in the history of cinema. It not only changed people's perception of science fiction films, but also grossed nearly $200 million from investment of only $1,100,000. To this day, no horror movie has been able to surpass Alien in creating a classic monster icon. The story takes place in a future world where human technology has advanced significantly, allowing them to freely travel in a vast universe. A spaceship named Nostromo, carrying 2,000 tons of ore and 7 crew members, is on its way back to Earth. But in the middle of the journey, an intelligent control system called Mother detected a strange signal of unknown origin. So it decided to wake all the members who were in a state of hibernation. When they woke up, the members thought they had arrived at a familiar planet and began discussing the reward for this mission. But when they reached the cockpit, the truth was revealed. This was not the planet they thought, but a completely alien planet. The members suddenly became bewildered, as if they had just eaten a sour candy. They tried to call back to the control center in space on Earth, but received no response. Before long, the ship approached a planet named Takira. Captain Dallas finally found the cause. In the control center, it turned out that Mother had changed the original trajectory because the strange signal was very likely a distress signal. In this situation, Mother had the authority to automatically change the course. Their current mission was to reach the planet that emitted the signal to carry out a rescue operation. Parker was very dissatisfied. He felt that this was a cargo ship, not a rescue ship, and had no obligation to go save anyone. However, Ash, the scientist, said that according to company regulations, if they received a signal from intelligent life during the journey, they were required to investigate. Hearing this, Parker immediately became submissive. The others had no choice but to obediently comply. They immediately maneuvered the ship, unaware that this rescue mission would bring them an unimaginable disaster. When they reached the orbit of the planet that emitted the signal, the crew switched to a smaller ship to proceed to their destination. But when they landed on the surface, they encountered a strong wind and had an accident. 3 out of 4 of the landing gear were damaged. Engineer Parker and Brett immediately began emergency repairs. Meanwhile, Dallas and 2 other members donned spacesuits to move toward the source of the signal in an extremely harsh environment. The 3 of them had to crawl a long distance of 2 kilometers to reach the signal source. Unexpectedly, the destination turned out to be an ancient spaceship that had crashed, looking very strange and potentially full of danger. Little did they know, they had no choice but to grit their teeth and explore. They followed an oval entrance and quickly stepped inside the ship. However, the signal was too weak, causing them to lose contact with Ash in the control room. They began to carefully feel their way around, climbing over a wall that was neither too high nor too low. The 3 of them accidentally stumbled into the ship's cockpit. Its strange shape made them wide-eyed in amazement. This was one of the most impressive scenes of the movie. Sitting in a control seat that looked like a cannon was a giant alien creature, dead for an unknown period. It had almost merged with the seat, its entire body turned to stone. The wound on its chest seemed to be the cause of its death. But strangely, the broken bones curved outward, as if something had crawled out of its body. This discovery sent shivers down the 3 of them. Lambert, the timid one, wanted to turn back immediately, but the co-pilot discovered some data leading downward. So they decided to continue exploring deeper. Meanwhile, Ripley, who stayed on the ship, had decoded part of the signal through Mother. This signal did not resemble a distress call, but seemed more like a warning. To be cautious, Ripley decided to go outside to call them back. But Ash said it was too late since they had already entered the ship. If there was truly danger, going outside could only bring trouble. Meanwhile, Kane had descended to the bottom of the ship through a passageway. The temperature here suddenly became warm, and the space was more spacious. Under the blue light, there were many strange orbs. Kane accidentally slipped and discovered that these were the eggs of an unknown creature. They were packed tightly everywhere, and the slime on the outside strangely flowed backward. Looking closely inside, it seemed that something was wriggling. Kane was unaware of the imminent danger and continued to observe curiously. Suddenly, an egg opened like a flower, and just as Kane was about to lean in closer, a creature burst out from inside, clinging tightly to his helmet. When Dallas and Lambert brought Kane back to the ship, he was unconscious. Ripley knew that there was an alien creature attached to Kane, but still decisively refused to open the door because it could contaminate the entire ship and threaten everyone's lives. According to quarantine regulations, he had to stay outside for 24 hours before being allowed in. But in this emergency situation, Dallas thought that saving a person was more important. When neither side was willing to compromise, Ash unexpectedly opened the door for all 3 of them to enter. They saw that Kane's helmet had been severely corroded. Ash carefully used a cutter to open Kane's helmet. When the protective layer was cut away, everyone gasped as they saw the alien creature clinging tightly to his face. All the crew gathered outside the medical room, their eyes wide in disbelief at this incredible sight. Ash tried to use forceps to separate the creature, but as soon as he applied a little pressure, it tightened its grip even more, and its tail wrapped tightly around Kane's neck. The two of them felt helpless, with no choice but to use equipment to scan Kane's body for any changes. It was unexpected that they discovered a tentacle of the creature had entered his throat and was supplying oxygen to him. Clearly, this creature had no intention of harming Kane, although they did not know what it wanted to do. But what needed to be done right now was to perform surgery to separate it. Ash intended to cut at the joint, but as soon as he cut into the skin, a stream of yellow blood burst out like a fountain, and not only that, it also had strong corrosive properties. In an instant, the floor was corroded with a large hole. Dallas felt something was wrong and ran downstairs to check. It was terrible. The floor had been burned through, and the situation was even worse as the corrosion continued until the second floor was also breached. Unexpectedly, just a little blood had such a frightening power. This kind of monster was truly terrifying. It seemed that separating the creature from Kane was nearly impossible. They had no choice but to place Kane back in a medical room and wait to see what would happen next. However, Ripley confronted Ash, questioning him that if he hadn't opened the door against regulations, they wouldn't have faced this uncontrollable situation. As a scientist, Ash should not make such foolish mistakes. But Ash seemed a bit frustrated. He just wanted to save a life. That was his responsibility. Not long after they returned to the medical room, they discovered that the alien creature had disappeared from Kane's face. While the three of them were searching around, suddenly Kane fell from above onto Ripley's shoulders, startling her. But strangely, the creature lay motionless on the floor, as if it were dead. Ash checked for a while and confirmed that it showed no signs of life. Although they did not know the cause, Ripley thought it should be discarded immediately. To avoid any accidents, Ash said that this was an alien creature never seen before, with high research value, and should be brought back to Earth. Dallas also agreed with Ash's decision, which left Ripley confused as to why he supported this. She followed closely behind and continuously questioned him, stating that she did not trust Ash because he had been acting strangely lately. Dallas, just a captain focused on piloting the ship, insisted that scientific matters were Ash's responsibility. He affirmed that Ash had no authority to interfere in this matter, and this was also company policy. Seeing that the captain had said this, Ripley had no choice but to accept it. Not long after, the spaceship was repaired, and they left this planet. Back on the ship, since they did not know whether Kane had been infected, everyone decided to put him in cold storage and treat him when they returned to Earth. But just then, Ash urged everyone to quickly go to the medical room. To their surprise, Kane, who had been in a coma, suddenly woke up as if nothing had happened, only feeling extremely hungry. All of his health indicators seemed normal. To celebrate the revival of the first officer, Dallas organized a light party with delicious food. Perhaps because he hadn't eaten anything for a long time, Kane ate heartily, making everyone joyful and excited. But while they were eating, Kane suddenly felt something was wrong with his body. Ash stood nearby, secretly observing, as if he had anticipated everything. In the blink of an eye, Kane collapsed on the dining table in pain and began to writhe. Everyone immediately rushed over to hold him down, preventing him from biting his tongue. But then, a horrifying scene unfolded as a large pool of blood appeared on Kane's chest, and a tiny creature that looked like an eel crawled out of his body. This adorable little monster looked very cute, but no one dared to take the risk. Lambert grabbed a kitchen knife, intending to deal with it immediately, but was stopped by everyone since they did not know what kind of power it had. The little monster let out a scream and quickly disappeared from everyone's sight. To deal with the situation that could arise at any moment, they decided to throw Kane's body into space and create some weapons to fight against the creature. They developed a powerful electric prod and a tracking device that would immediately react if the creature appeared nearby. Under Dallas's command, the 7 of them split into 2 small teams to search for traces of the monster. The space on the ship was vast, so finding the tiny creature was not an easy task. But not long after, Ripley discovered something. The tracking device detected movement in the cargo hold. When they entered, the device reacted stronger and stronger, finally locking onto a storage cabinet in front of them. The 3 of them carefully prepared to catch the creature, but when the cabinet door opened, unexpectedly, their pet cat jumped out. To avoid causing trouble with the cat, the 3 of them split into 2 groups again. Ripley and Lambert continued to search for the monster while Brett went to catch the cat. But nothing was certain, and as misfortune would have it, Brett found the cat but also encountered the monster. Unexpectedly, the tiny monster grew rapidly. Just after a few hours, it had become a gigantic monster. Seeing the beloved cat seemed frightened, Red realized that something was unusual. But when he turned around, it was already too late. Once again, they lost a member of the team. everyone began to panic. Lambert and Ripley saw the monster, which was larger than an adult, and it had pulled Brett into the ventilation shaft. However, Dallas thought this was an opportunity because the ventilation shaft led directly to the main airlock, and between the two places, there was only a repair hole. If they could just block the hole and drive the monster into the main airlock, they could throw it out into space. Thinking that animals are usually afraid of fire, Lambert had crafted several flamethrowers. When everything was ready, the team began to split up to take action. Ripley and AS held positions at the main airlock, while Lambert and Dallas blocked the repair hole. Dallas decided to go in alone to drive the monster. Each time he moved forward a bit, he called Ripley to close the door behind him. Just then, the tracking device detected traces of the monster, but in the blink of an eye, it disappeared again. However, everyone was sure that it was still nearby. When Dallas carefully used the flamethrower to search, the tracking device suddenly reported that the monster was getting closer. Everyone's hearts raced as if they wanted to jump out. Lambert urged Dallas to quickly leave that place, but unfortunately, it was too late. Now, even the captain was gone. Ripley decided that the plan must continue unless there was a better way. But Lambert was completely devastated. He didn't want to go to a dangerous place. He just wanted to get on the shuttle and leave this ship. But the shuttle only had enough room for 4 people. Lambert was impatient, preparing to rush in with the monster. Fortunately, Ripley remained calm and managed to stop Lambert in time, saying that the only way now was to drive the monster out into space through the ventilation shaft. Everyone was looking for ways to deal with the monster, but AS was silent, showing no signs of worry. Ripley sensed that something was wrong, so while AS wasn't paying attention, she sneaked into the control room to check. Unexpectedly, she discovered a shocking secret about the company. It turned out that the change of course was not random. The true objective of this trip was to investigate extraterrestrial life and bring back samples. The company was even willing to sacrifice all the crew members on the ship, except for the scientist AS. Even the captain was unaware of this plan. Just then, AS suddenly appeared in the control room. Upon learning the truth, Ripley was so angry that her face turned red, unable to believe that the company could be so ruthless. She rushed outside, determined to tell everyone the truth. But AS had no intention of letting Ripley out. He immediately locked the hatch. To her surprise, AS suddenly became a completely different person. No longer with a cheerful smile, his face was cold and emotionless. He lunged at Ripley, and AS's strength was now incredibly powerful. He grabbed Ripley and tossed her around like a doll. After defeating her, AS even rolled up a book and stuffed it into Ripley's mouth. Fortunately, just then, Lambert and Kane appeared in time. But no matter how hard the two tried, they couldn't separate AS from Ripley. Kane was tightly gripped by AS, in so much pain that he had to grab a fire extinguisher and hit him with it. Finally, they managed to stop AS's strange behavior. But right after that, a horrifying scene occurred. AS began to thrash about like an abnormal person, spewing out a large amount of white liquid from his mouth. Without hesitation, Kane tried again. To their shock, AS's head suddenly fell off. At that moment, they realized that AS was actually an artificial creature designed to learn how to deal with the monster. Ripley had to repair AS, but the answer she received was truly despairing. There was no way to destroy the monster. Whether in strength or physicality, the monster was flawless. It could be said that it was the most perfect creature in the universe. After saying this, AS didn't forget to mock the 3 of them, saying that they had no chance of survival. Ripley, furious, pulled the plug, declaring that the only way now was to destroy the entire ship. Then they would use the shuttle to leave. The 3 immediately sprang into action, preparing to activate the ship's self-destruct sequence. When a self-destruct program was activated, they had only 10 minutes to reach the shuttle. However, the shuttle needed coolant while operating, so Ripley ran off to start the shuttle while Kane and Lambert took care of the coolant. Little did they know, while the two were installing the coolant, the monster suddenly appeared in front of Lambert. Kane shouted loudly for Lambert to get out of the way as he prepared to use the flamethrower to deal with the monster. But Lambert was so scared that he couldn't lift his feet. With no other choice, Kane had to rush into the monster. But in just a moment, Kane was knocked away by the monster. Immediately, the monster opened its mouth and swiftly sent Kane away. Meanwhile, Lambert stood there like a statue, forgetting how to escape. The outcome for him was predictable. When Ripley finally found her beloved cat, she heard the anguished cries of the 2 men. But when she ran to the spot, she only found their bodies severely injured. Terrified, Ripley turned and ran straight to the control room to activate the ship's self-destruct sequence. In 5 minutes, the self-destruct program would be irreversible. 10 minutes later, the ship would explode. Ripley held the cat in one hand and a flamethrower in the other, continuously running toward the shuttle. As Ripley hurried toward the shuttle, she nearly ran into the monster in a hidden corner. Fortunately, it didn't detect her. But oh no, the only way out was blocked. Time was slipping away, and there wasn't much left. Ripley had no choice but to leave her beloved cat behind to attract the monster's attention, then stealthily return to the control room to deactivate the self-destruct system. Unfortunately, she arrived a moment too late. The 5 minutes were up, and it was no longer possible to cancel it. Thus, Ripley had to go back. When she returned to that hidden corner, to her surprise, the monster had disappeared, and the cat was still safely sitting there. She hurriedly closed the safe door and started the shuttle. As soon as the shuttle left the large ship, Ripley breathed a sigh of relief, thinking everything was over. But before she could celebrate, when she opened the hatch to crawl in and rest, a monstrous leg suddenly reached out from the dark corner. I can't believe it. The monster had followed her onto the shuttle. Fortunately, it didn't detect her, but this situation couldn't last forever. Ripley knew she had to find a way to end this. She quickly put on her spacesuit, then grabbed a rope, carefully sat in the pilot's seat, and fastened her seatbelt. After a while of maneuvering, Ripley managed to drive the monster out of the dark corner. She opened the hatch, intending to throw the monster out into the vastness of space. But alas, the rope got stuck in the door. Seeing the monster preparing to crawl in, Ripley quickly activated the cloaking mode, using high temperature to burn through the rope. Finally, the monster flew into the darkness of space. At last, everything was resolved. After recording what had happened, Ripley lay down in the sleeping chamber. She had no idea how long she would drift in space or if anyone would come to rescue her. The movie just ended. If you enjoyed it, give it a like and subscribe so I have more motivation to tell more stories.